Welcome again to Dentistry Beyond the Numbers, the podcast that explains business side of dentistry from practice, clinical growth, M&A, and everything in between. My name is Dr. Marc Liechtung, and I'm today joined by a very dear friend and somebody that Dr. Tony Stefanou. There's a lot to talk about Dr. Tony Stefanou about. He's a dentist that really has emerged as one of the M&A kings on the clinical and any side. We're going to find out which side. But he's somebody that I know for, touch and go for a long time, and he's a New Yorker like me. I will say that just similar, I got to say, getting to know Tony a little bit, he may have seen more practices in the last 10 years than I have, and that's saying a lot. And that you just gain tremendous experience and knowledge when you just visit things, talk to dentists. But Tony's a former dentist turned mergers and acquisitions expert, founder of Connect the Dents. We're talking about what's happening in the dental industry right now, a very poignant time. Private equity, DSOs, practice sales, consolidation, and of course, that word, EBITDA. And what's all it means to you, the dentists and the business owners, and where we're going. I will talk about our accolades for the podcast, but I'm really excited at the end of the podcast, but I'm really excited to get into discussions with Tony because he really does know so much about the industry. Welcome, Dr. Stefanou. And may I add one more thing? I just got my invite. The best party thrower of any major dental convention. Look for it, seek it out. It is a great, networking. It really is about networking. And Tony, you really bring people together. It's really a thrill to have the man who went from the drill to the deal maker, right? And I want to know about what made it happen. But first of all, welcome, Dr. Stefanou.
Thanks, Dr. Marc. I do appreciate we go way back in different ways over the years, kind of cross paths, and I'm happy to be here. And I was excited when you asked me to be a part of this. And we have to, we all learn from one another. So this is going to be I think a podcast for the listeners, and hopefully you pick up a few pearls. And
that's right.
Excited to be here. Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. And this is really, for those out there, this is really an important time. The industry is opening up, as they say. The interest rates are coming down. Practices are poised, but more important, there is more, as they call it in the industry, dry powder on the sidelines and ready to act in dentistry. But we're going to find out, maybe not the same way they always acted. But Tony, you started practicing as a dentist. So what's beautiful about guys like us is we've been at the chair. We know what it's like. We understand. What inspired a guy like you, a nice practice, I hear fee for service. What made you go into the business side of dentistry?
Yeah, it wasn't a planned thing. I was fortunate enough to get out of dental school at a young age. I started practicing at 24. And I always kind of did things a little differently. I think if you ask my dental school classmates now and they see what I do now, they'd be like, even in dental school, we could see, Tony had a little bit of a way of looking at the industry on a
the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, but at the same time, it wasn't, I practiced full time for 20 years. I'm still licensed, but it's been quite a while since I've actually practiced. I want to keep up my license, but for 20 years, I was in the trenches. I actually had a little bit of an outlier type of a situation. I had a dental chiropractic office for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
We like to say we were kind of the originators of the whole concept of the wellness type of a practice location. But it was really just to save costs. It was a college buddy of mine, a fraternity brother, a best friend of mine, and we didn't have any money back in those days, and we decided to open up a practice together and so split the bills, so to speak. And it worked out great. But, little by little, I got involved really more in product development. I was the dental director for an oral care company, developed a bunch of toothpastes and mouth rinses and periodontal gels. First ones to use xylitol, alcohol-free mouth rinses, stuff like that. And I kind of worked with the company to not only lecture about the program, but also develop independent sales team and launching new products in the industry. I learned a lot about what was going on the business side. It's easy when you're in the operatory, you look at a product or something, you don't really know the product's background. You don't know how it got into the industry. I had to learn all that on the fly, and I was still pretty young at that point. And then I just started to get to know a lot of people in the industry and different companies and stuff. Somewhere along the way, I started to recognize that dentistry was going to go through a consolidation on every level, whether it was the practice level and then also the manufacturers, the company side. There were just so many dental companies out there. We kind of saw the writing on the wall. So I started to get trained on merger and acquisitions and ended up getting a CBI certification, a certified business intermediary. And we formed Connect the Dents a number of years ago to kind of work on both the practice side and on the company side. And that's the way we are right now, kind of split in half. We have some people that work deals on the practice DSO side and some that work on the company side. But
That's awesome.
it was not planned.
Right.
It just kind of happened, and it's been a great ride.
None of the great ideas really are planned. You just walk into it. But let me ask you, I mean, because I know me, what happened, why I stopped practicing, but did you enjoy clinical dentistry, or was it something? Because I understand about it, everyone's a large group, and he said I had 10 thumbs, but I love the industry.
I never was interested in like building a multi-million-dollar practice. That was not my thing. So it was more boutique-like. And again, I was with a chiropractor. So we did some interesting stuff. I practiced the way I wanted to practice. It was basically fee for service. It was enjoyable from that perspective. My wife is also a dentist, and one thing we always made a pact, we weren't going to practice together. And that's worked out great. She still practices, has her own place. But we practiced a little differently when we did, but both of us kind of like had more of a boutique type of a practice. And from that perspective, I enjoy it, but it was really before things, when I left the practice side of it, it was really before there were a lot of the headaches that they deal with now, overhead being as high as it is, dealing with insurance. And that's why I decided that I was going to do more of a fee-for-service thing. But practices today are under a lot of pressure, and practice owners have a lot of things to think about. It wasn't quite as challenging when I was doing it.
You didn't have to spend $10,000, $12,000 a month on marketing to get yourself somewhere near the first page. I mean, let's face it, dentists and we as a profession have allowed in the riffraff. And to me, being on the front lines, I think the biggest challenge for me is not only just finding different labs or anything, but marketing has become such a slog. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
it's all just grab and go, I feel.
Everybody wants to help you. There are certainly people out there that can help you, but just even wading through it, the biggest problem we used to have is, are we going to actually talk to this manufacturer or dealer rep? Now we're dealing with the fact that there are marketing people all over the place. But I think the biggest challenge, I think you would agree with this, Mark, is the headaches of HR and, putting together a really good office team, dentists and hygienists getting along with one another. There's just a lot of stuff.
I think that's an incredible point that you make, because here we are about to talk money, but the biggest thing is you could walk in and you can have just some young lady or young man that looks at things in a different view, and they're out to cause trouble. And I can go through it. I could tell you I'm going through it. I mean, being involved in the day-to-day, you go through it. And you're right, HR is a problem. But we used to say this about dentists. And before we go on, I mean, look at us. We could spend a steak dinner and need more just talking. But, I feel that we as dentists have the ability, really, they use this term, but it's a CEO. You have HR, marketing, you have costs of goods sold, you have lab tech, you have what are you going to do with your marketing? How are you going to bring in this renovation? Are you going to, buy this equipment? It comes at us fast and furious. And then you got to go home and you got to maintain a loved one, a family, a this, or that. It is a very tough situation. I wanted to know when you decided to go into entrepreneur and buy businesses and move people forward, what is Connect the Dents? Before we dive into anything, let's establish that you've been doing this for 20 years, and we all want to know exactly what Connect the Dents transpired into, really emerged into.
Well, I think that the best way to explain it is that we wanted to form a company that really was dental specific, only work in the dental industry. A lot of people that work mergers and acquisitions, they do practice appraisals, or they work one area of dentistry, but they also represent and work other healthcare verticals and stuff like that. We like to position ourselves as dental people, and we provide any type of service for practice owners, DSOs, companies, entrepreneurs, any type of business owner in dentistry. Really, we always like to say is we get them what they want. What are they looking for? Are they looking for an exit strategy? Are they looking to learn how to grow more? Are they looking at, acquiring other companies? Are they looking at, just understanding their current value? What is it they want? So in order to do that, we had to surround ourselves at Connect the Dents with people who were dental people that were experienced at a lot of phases of dentistry. So our group of 12 to 14 people that are kind of positioned all around the country, that doesn't really matter. I mean, we're headquartered in New York because I live here. But these group of people, some of them are clinical, some of them are still practicing clinically. We have some dentists and hygienists still practicing. We have others that are like me that got out of clinical and are focused now on the business side. We have someone like, for instance, our chief financial advisor is a woman named Carolyn Van Eck, and she was the CFO of GC America for 30 years. Wow. So she helps with company valuation. She's got a financial background. We have other people that have been in the industry for 20, 30 years that were former COOs, vice presidents of sales, have their own consulting companies. So we have people that really understand dentistry from every angle. And I think that's really what we try to position ourselves to do. So we are dental people, but we also are, we understand dentistry. I mean, we have companies that come to us and they're not even interested necessarily in buying or selling their company, or they're not interested in, I don't know, even putting together a sales team or business development or anything. What they really want to know is, hey, you're dental people, take a look at our product lines. Where should we expand? Should we get into clear aligners? Should we get into implants? Right. Just because we're dental people. And I think that's really important that people look at us as people that just have been around and looked around. So it is an advantage to be a long-time person. Now, at the same time, because dentistry is changing, it is important for Connect the Dents also to have younger people that are not necessarily around 30, 40 years, but people that have been around 10, 15 years that really understand what's going on in social media, what's going on in, all different aspects of the dental industry and can relate to that.
What I like to say is you can always learn social media and digital dentistry. You can't learn the experience that some of us have.
Yeah, so, right. It was great.
Sweet man told me, Mark, you want to be in practice for 10 years? You got to be in practice for 10 years. I think it's great. I think one thing about our industry, and you are an example, is the pass it down. One thing that people who are entrepreneurs now, there weren't those entrepreneurs 40, 50 years ago. At least we didn't hear about it like this. But they can learn so much from people like yourself and maybe myself and others that want to come out, made a good living, and want to share good things. I mean, so let's get into, I like that. Let's get into the money. Let's talk about, what you've seen over 20 years. We've established, your stuff. But we keep hearing about DSOs, roll-up, private equity, buying practice, now not buying practices. What's driving this wave? Is it profits? What is it? Because some of us may be practicing on Main Street dentistry and don't see the profits that some other people are seeing. So what is driving this wave?
The wave in terms of what? The DSO movement?
The consolidation, businesses?
Well, I think there's a few things going on. I think number one, I think it's multifactorial. I don't think there's any question that, dentistry was one of the last healthcare verticals where you didn't see, let's say, private equity or the money, the Wall Street money pouring in. They've done what they're doing now in dentistry. Dentistry is a very fragmented industry. But the one thing that separated dentistry from other verticals, and I think it's why it took so long for this to happen, is that dentists still can practice any way they want. I think the medical world is different than dental. That stuff happened 10, 15, 20 years ago there. But it was only a matter of time it happened in dentistry. And I think part of it is a few things. Number one, you don't really see as many legacy practices as you used to. Used to be, hey, here's the thing. You get out of dental school. I had a class of 120 people. 119 of us, we were going to own one dental practice. Now, whether or not they taught you how to actually run a practice, they didn't, but that's a different story. But one person went into public health. But it wasn't like I'm going to go into dentistry and have 5 practices, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that, and we're gonna probably practice till we're 70 years old. If you look at the dental school seniors right now and you survey them, which we've done, 1 in 3 dentists, senior dentists, say they'll never own a dental practice. It's just too much for them. They look at dentistry as a high-paying career, but they have a lot of debt and they just don't want to deal with all that. But 1 in 5 say they're going to own 5 or more. So what's happened is, I think as the generations have gone on, we start to understand some people become more business savvy. Some people have seen what's going on in the other industries. A lot of the older baby boomer dentists, though, have built larger practices. They don't have their sons or daughters to take over anymore. Some of them do, but not at quite the same level that they used to. And then you've got all these dentists coming out with debt. And the bottom line is, they're not going to sit around and pay you $1.5 million, $2 million for your practice and go further into debt. And not only that, they can't even get the money to begin with. So the whole thing about the DSOs coming in and stuff, it was a matter of time. And it's fine that they're here. They're not going away. But there's also now that the traditional DSO model has been out there a while. It's an option that dentists have, but now we're starting to see that there are other models and other options as well. So there's all these different types of buyers, which I think was just a natural evolution. And dentistry was just one of the last disciplines to go in. And at the same time, dentistry is never going to be where you're not going to have that private dentist, a boutique dentist. We're not going to get to 100% of it's
my next question. I mean, it almost seems like for the last 10, 15 years, as the groups have gotten larger, it has become an us versus them mentality. The private practice wants to stay. I want to stay clean. I do not want to deal with the groups. And then there's the DSOs that are wiping up and cleaning. I should say buying up everything. But there is a tremendous, shall I say, challenge to the private practice, right? They have to deal with the competition of marketing, sure, the benefits that staff gets, the rising costs that staff cost. I mean, the increase in hygienists, I think, had a lot to do with COVID, but a lot to do with the groups, right? So my question is, have you really seen, I mean, we're going through it a lot now with the multiples variations of the multiples. Is there an 8 to 10? Is it going down? At some point, I always said that the PE firms will get wise and realize we always bought these practices at a percentage of gross. We didn't buy them at a percentage of
what we used to do.
Their EBITDA, right? So we used to buy these things at 80% gross. I give you 100% gross. If they're going to start reducing the multiple, does that bring in the private buyer?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to answer that, at a minimum, you're just going to see different models emerge, and they already are. There are alternate models, but I do think the one question that really then gets asked still is, are we looking at consolidation where there's not going to be the private practice anymore because that's where they're all going to go to the groups? And the answer to that is there's just too many types of practices that are not appealing to the traditional DSO, especially the PE-backed model. They're not going to go into the cities and buy a 2-operatory practice on the 38th floor of Midtown Manhattan. They're not going to go for, in the smaller practices or these more certain specialty. They like bread and butter dentistry. There are also a lot of international dentists, students now that are graduating. They open up in an area where they have culturally their fit of patients. They're not going to sell the PE-backed DSOs. So we're never going to see that full consolidation. What we are going to see, though, because, and we'll get into this, where the EBITDA, the multiples on EBITDA have started to go down. There are reasons for that. We are going to see alternate models and different types of buyers now emerge. So there are going to be more options. And I think with that is now going to be dentistry is getting to the point where the practitioner that's getting to the 3, 5, 10 year before retirement really has to get smarter and smarter as to what are the options, what is really the true value of my practice. Because one of the problems we're facing is that dentists have now started talking and chattering a lot to each other. There's a lot of gossip. There's a lot. But one thing about dentistry is, unlike other healthcare verticals, dentists talk to one another. And there's a lot, like their dental school roommate or whatever sold to 10 times to some, or at least they told them they sold it 10 times to some DSO. And now they're saying, well, I have to get 10 times if they get 10 times, but they have a completely different type of practice and it's a different year. We're not in 2022 anymore. We're not in, 2018 anymore. So I think part of it is there has to be an understanding of somewhere it got to the point where premiums were being paid. Dentists were hearing a lot of stories. They're starting to increase their IQ as to what they should or shouldn't get for the practice. And with that, we're starting these stricter criteria. And I hate to say this, we talk about collusion in sports. Oh, they're colluding the owners. Well, I think the DSOs, there's not collusion, but they started to realize, especially the PE-backed DSOs, that, enough's enough. We've got to make this so that there's reasonable. We're not going to overpay. We're not going to pay these premiums. And, then go ahead and then realize that we're going to have to recapitalize at some point. And if there's rollover equity involved, we have to be able to say, hey, you know what, you're going to get a return on that. But if we keep paying 10 multiples for a $2 million practice,
well said,
that can't work.
And that's exactly what's going on. Right now, I could tell everyone the multiples are dropping. And I also feel something different before we really dive into the EBITDA. I feel that the guys or groups that own 15, 20 offices, it's not as attractive to the ones that own 3 to 5. And the reason is because they can get the 6 multiple that the group wants, and then they can build them a lot easier if they need building. But that's my belief. My belief is if you have one practice doing bigger numbers, more chairs, great team, you're going to be more valuable than a 3-4 chair group that's just everyone's running at about 70%. But I do want to ask you, we've both been around long enough to see the differences and why practices are sold. Used to be percentage of gross, then dots on a map, then EBITDA. Do you think it's changing now that the EBITDA is coming down? Do you think there's other things? Are there things people need to know about in their offices? Like for me, I'll tell any owner-operator, if you're doing more than 50% of the dentistry or more, get another associate if you want to sell because your production is wiped out. So you don't even count as EBITDA. So you've got to start building your associates. And that's how you get a bigger, but there's a lot. And there's doctors that could do surgery, doctors do implants. That's paying a doc 35% instead of 50%. The groups have looked at this. They're looking for general dentists, right? They're looking for really what I preach is the hamster of 5 different things that you can do in a chair that you could be. Why would you own a practice? You're producing, a New York dentist produces $1.8 million. He takes home 500-600, or she takes home 500,000-600,000. Why do I have to have the stress? I go home, I just go out and come back and do it again. So what do you see, like the younger dentists that are coming out? Are they gravitating to groups, or are they back again looking for their own little business?
Well, I think most of the dentists that are coming out, the ones that are in debt, they're going to come out and probably work for a DSO affiliate. And I think a lot of them can make a good living doing that. I think a lot of them will just do that for their careers. There'll be a certain percentage of them that still have the itch, or somewhere along the line they're going to want to start their own group, or they're going to want one practice. They're going to do that. But I think going back to the actual sale of the practice, right, looking at EBITDA, I do think that EBITDA multiples are still going to be the base for, but there is the adjustments that have now finally been made. Well, look, if we sell a dental company to another dental company, forget about practice DSO on the company side, a manufacturer buying another manufacturer in dentistry, they're done on multiples of EBITDA. You sell a florist, you sell a gas station, you sell a liquor store, it's on EBITDA multiples. That's the way the world works. Now, having said that, the problem was what was going on in dentistry was the EBITDA multiple, okay, the multiple itself was created by the collection number. And that was the number, right? It was like, okay, so as that goes up, you have a $2 million practice. That might be a 5 EBITDA, 3 million, it might be a 6 EBITDA, 7, and it might go up one time per $1 million. We actually look at it at tenths of every 100,000. So it could be 3.2
and you're
times.
And
the problem is that you can get up to 8, 9 if you are like a $7 million practice. What's going on now is realistically, the EBITDA multiple is still going to be the basis, but the EBITDA multiple, there's going to be a little bit of a cap. You're not going to have a PE-backed company that's going to say, oh, you're at $6 million, so we're going to give you a 9-time multiple on it. There's going to be a little bit of a cap on it, but the reality is that is fair because you know what? Somebody doing $8-9 million, something that would have gotten an 8 to 10 times a few years ago, and now the DSO is technically overpaying it. They're thinking, okay, we're going to promise this return on equity, and we're going to get 15 times what we recapitalize. Starting to realize that's not realistic, right? So what's going on?
I just want to translate for the listeners. What Tony's saying is really that these people, these PE firms, are looking at our dentists and saying, how well are you running your business? How well do you have payroll? It's not just gross revenue at $8 million and we're going to give. You need to see if you're spending $3 million on payroll and then you have doctors doing your work and you're walking home with $600,000 on an $8 million. That's not good.
Yeah, so I think more importantly, if you really want to simplify it for everybody listening, really what's more important is, and if you think about it, right, this really makes a lot more sense. It's not like the EBITDA multiple should keep going up as the collection number goes up. What's more important is the percentage of EBITDA to collection. So if you're getting 6 or 7 times and you're all pissed off because your buddy got 9 times a while back, but he might have gotten 9 times, but his EBITDA may not have been very large. Okay, the reality is you can build yourself a nice value practice if you focus on how your cash flow, reducing your expenses, taking a look at streamlining certain things, adding some services, doing what you want to do to get that EBITDA number up, because when the EBITDA number comes up, your percentage of EBITDA to collections is higher, and then you're getting 6, 7 times, if that's the cap that we're heading towards, well, you're getting a very good price for your practice. It's more important of what your percentage is rather than just saying we're going to give you this time no matter what your EBITDA number is just because you have an $8 million collection. And so I hope people understand that.
Yeah. Really, so what we're saying, and I agree with him 100% because I've witnessed it, a phenomenal $7 million practice came across the table about 3 years ago when I just sold to Guardian. And we looked at it and they were at a 9% EBITDA.
Yeah, just way too
Guardian, we didn't even look at it. He said, we're gonna revitalize a practice. We're not here to just start from ground up. Another practice came in, 3.5 million, 24% of EBITDA. Boom. Boom. It's a big
Well, that's where you want to be.
And
that 25 to 30% is a really sweet spot. And not only that, I always talk to people about, I think what gets overlooked sometimes is you have 2 practices side to side, same collection. Okay, what's the EBITDA percentage? The other thing to look at is what's the hygiene department percentage? You get some of these right. Hygiene department is really important here because it's passive income. It's a great reflection of how healthy the practice is. We see some that are at 12%, but we see a lot that are at 30%. You have a 30% practice of hygiene collections, and then you have a 25% EBITDA. That's the type of practice where you're going to get, you know what? You're going to have a nice cash flow. You're going to get, even at a 6 or 7 multiple cap, so to speak, you're going to be very attractive.
Very well.
You're going to have multiple buyers that'll be interested in you. And then bottom line is you're doing very well for yourself. So that whole thing about the EBITDA multiple was really just based on a very superficial thing. It's the percent of EBITDA collection that's important.
That's a great point, and that's a pearl. 30% of your revenue is your hygiene. I like to look at another aspect, and that is second appointments from the hygiene share. Is the hygienist and the doctor doing same-day dentistry? How much does that hygienist create, not revenue-driven from her chair, but post-revenue-driven from her chair, and the way they sell dentistry? And the 25% of EBITDA, you'll be writing your ticket. But that is what we're talking about. It's no longer the gross. Yeah, gross is important. Nobody's touching you if you're doing $200,000. But if you're doing 4 or 5 million and you have a 28% EBITDA, well, then you should be speaking to somebody about it.
Look, it's important. There's a difference in value on $1 million practice versus a $3 or $4 million practice. Yeah, the $3 to $4 million practice should get a higher multiple in a sense. That it obviously, but the thing is, if you have a 9% EBITDA on a $5 million practice, well, If you're sitting there going, well, I know my buddy sold it 9 times, you're not going to get that at a 9%, even if. So what you should be doing is we evaluate practices. We've done over 2,000 of them. We see a 9%, and we say, look, you know what? You're doing $3-4 million. Yeah, technically, you could sell this to an individual buyer or to a group. You might get a nice price. You're going to get a much better price, even though you might not get a 9 multiple. You're going to get a much better price if you focus the next 12 months on increasing your EBITDA. And there's a lot of ways of doing that. And not only that, the other key factor is, is there room for expansion in the practice?
Exactly.
And I think it's a major factor. When we appraise practices, Mark, we do what's called a practice score, because it's not just the financial numbers, and two practices can look the same financially, and all these other factors are now involved. We do a score, which is a non-financial score. We look at, is there room to expand? Is the office team in there? Yeah, we look at CapEx. We look at, again, what kind of a lease, what kind of a rent situation we have. We look at a lot of different factors. We have 8 factors, and we come up with a score. That score is then looked upon when you do the multiple of the correct multiple, as today would dictate. And we look at it and say, does that score help then to increase or decrease the practice value a slight bit? Your practice might have a really good score because they have a lot of good things that are trending up. You have space. You own the real estate. You can create your own lease. You have hygienists that have been there 10, 15, 20 years. You've got a real good office team in place. Those factors, those what you call intangibles, that actually should then deserve a little higher EBITDA multiple because of it.
I got to tell you, I went through something with this. Reputation. Today, the people that are running these PE firms, the first thing they look at is our reputations. They don't want to see a 2.9 and they have to justify why they're giving them a multiple. This is what Tony spoke about. Every aspect of our practice, it's like, I make the analogy, it's either a football team where you have different types of offense, defense, special teams, quarterback, coach. You have different aspects in your practice, and you have to go through it and you have to evaluate it. You do not want to go to market with a 3-2 reputation. You want to bring somebody in and get a 4-6.
And I'll tell you what, Mark, again, we're talking as dental people, and this is like going almost full circle back. I will say this. Dentistry is a different animal. So when the PE people came in, and these DSOs that were PE back that came in, look, the PE people are financial people. They know what they're doing in a lot of ways, but they're also not dental people. What we were seeing years ago, they were just looking at the financial numbers. Here's the bottom line. You want to really understand what a dental practice market value should be. Yeah, I understand it's set by, the economy. It's set by supply and demand. It's set by, what the DSOs are looking to do on their own exit strategy. I get all that. But the bottom line is a practice value of a dental office is different than practice value of a medical office or something else. Patient goodwill is different. We like to say when we evaluate, we look at the whole practice. We're not just looking at collection number and EBITDA multiples. We're not just trying to, throw some number out there to make the practice owner happy with that. Because again, what does it matter? If your EBITDA is not strong, what does it matter what the multiple is? The truth of the matter is dental practices and DSOs really, really need to surround themselves with people that understand the dynamics of dentistry. The dynamics of dentistry, because you have hygienists, because you have office managers, because you're dealing with all these other factors now that we didn't have years ago that deal with the marketing of a private practice, all these things. I always say the reason that people hire us now to evaluate their practice is because we're dental people and we can look at everything, where if you have just an accountant or someone in the industry that's a non-dentist, they're just doing it based on we're gonna adjust the EBITDA, but they don't really understand why this expense is what it is and whether or not it can be reduced or whether or not it is really only for that practice and won't be for the buyer. Do you make an adjustment on that or not? And do yourselves a favor, if you're a practice owner listening to this, make sure you understand where you stand based on someone that does understand the industry enough so that when you do see evaluation, you see it's at a 6-time multiple, But then you see what your EBITDA is, as opposed to if you had, let's say, an accountant. I'm not knocking accountants, but an accountant that doesn't understand dentistry, and their EBITDA could be $100,000 less than the EBITDA that it should be at because of the fact that they don't understand which adjustments do need to be made. And I think that's an important factor as well. EBITDA is what it is. It's adjusted EBITDA that we're looking at. And you really have to understand the dynamics of a dental practice in order to determine true EBITDA.
That's a great point. Wow. Really is a great point. And I think that's why you're seeing, I think the world of a lot of brokers and a lot of evaluators and a lot of consultants. But what's going on now in dentistry is people like Tony are really understanding the entire makeup from start to getting it to where you want to be. Listen to the percentages he throws around. It's the percentages I live by. And then how do you go to market? About that, are there operational areas, marketing, hygiene, leadership, that often make or break the value? Is there something that you see most practices lean more on than they should, and that could hurt their bottom line?
Well, you mean in terms of like expenses?
Is labor out of whack? Is marketing ego? That.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little out of whack. I will say this about marketing, and I think it's an important point here. I think that if a practice is going through their growth phase, okay, and a lot of times what happens is, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be marketing at practice, but what they do is they get talked into by a consultant or a marketer. Hey, throw a lot of money into marketing, and by doing so, you're going to be able to get X number. But it's a crapshoot. Marketing is a crapshoot. And I think very often we see very high percentage of collections going to marketing, right? And it's very inconsistent because you really can't predict what you're going to get out of it very often. I always tell these dentists, if you're in growth phase, you've got a decent amount of space, what you should be doing, honestly, instead of spending a lot of money on the marketing end, is acquire, merge in another practice. Okay, take on another 1,000 active patients from some retiring dentist who's ready to go, bring them in. You're almost then guaranteed the majority of those patients are going to stay aboard. I think people sometimes spend way too much money on that without looking at it.
But I do want to ask you this, because when I go into an area that I've established a practice, I call it looking left. It's like in the mouth, looking left, looking right. There's got to be older dentists. But you and I, were spoiled to live and grow up and work in a city like New York, where you had chart sales every half a block.
Yeah.
What does the guy in rural Kansas do? What does the people in, the Chicago suburb do, where these practices might be closing up or they're not there? I mean, I agree with you. Marketing, I don't want to put it down, but it's very difficult. There's more, we're being played with at times. But consolidation with practices, or definitely acquiring a chart sale, is fantastic. Not part of art, but is there some sort of mileage in those rural areas? Do you say it's okay to take a practice 15, 20 miles? Or it's just the luck of the draw, and if you're in rural America, that's it?
Yeah, I do agree that there are going to be some places where that's not going to be quite as easy to do. But, then if you're a general dentist and you're in rural America, you maybe have some more space, you have the ability to do a lot of other things. And I think really what those dentists should be looking at doing is becoming a lot more multidisciplinary. Awesome. I think what they should be doing is they should be doing a lot more in-house of work. They shouldn't be referring out as much. If they're in rural America, the specialists aren't even necessarily that close to them, but you can do certain things, right? And then bring in, I don't want to use the word overuse it in a way where it was negative, but these profit centers situation. I'm still seeing a lot of dentists, general dentists, they're like, yeah, well, whatever. I don't know if I should get into things like sleep apnea and Invisalign and all that stuff. I'm sorry to say this, but it doesn't matter if you're in rural America, you're in whatever, cosmetic dentistry, things like sleep apnea, stuff like that. That's in demand everywhere.
There's going to be people sleeping in the barns.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean,
into the house.
You should be offering more services. You should be having the specialists there. Definitely be a lot more prevention oriented, diagnostics oriented, technology oriented. Those are the things that you want to do in rural America. It's not quite as easy as bringing another practice in, but you do that and you're going to have a lot more appeal when you develop your exit strategy. And I think really there's still a lot of dentists that are too, I don't want to say lazy, but they're looking at it like, oh, that time has passed.
Lazy.
I don't think it has, especially if you're relying on your practice sale eventually for your retirement. You should be thinking more along the lines of, what else can I offer here?
You got to blaze at all cylinders. You got to pick up. And I think that answer was absolutely fantastic because, that's what groups are doing now. And the education of GPs going into surgery. I've got general dentists working for me for years that do surgery better than my perio surgeries. I mean, these guys and gals are so talented and offering more of the multidisciplinary procedures and doing larger cases all on X's, offering sleep, offering Botox maybe. It may sound gimmicky, but if you're a man or a woman on an island, that might be. I know it's getting late. I really want to get through this because I must say this has been incredible. What do independent dentists need to do now to stay competitive, if anything? Is there anything the independent can do to stay a little more competitive?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they have to do is, start to start to understand where why your overhead is where it's at. You don't have leverage in certain ways that some of the groups have, and so you're competing with a DSO affiliate down the block. But if you're a private dentist, I mean, learn and understand read your P&L document. I mean, look at, where are my expenses right now? Is this the best, or is this what I should be doing? Is this efficient? Start looking at your expenses a little bit better. Start looking at really building a team that's loyal and strong, and not coming in and it costs more to hire hygienists and all that stuff, but you got to be much smarter about it. I think those things are still things that we're not doing a great job of in private practice. But I think the bottom line is, I had a conversation with a dental hygienist who went into a little bit non-clinical. She became a regional hygiene director for a large DSO. And she said, we were always complaining as hygienists, like, we need to make more money, this and that. And everybody used to say, yeah, but you don't know what it's like running a dental practice. She said, now I got this job, and my role is to look at every P&L every month of every practice in my region. And all of a sudden, a light bulb went up, and she was like, oh, now I understand what the challenges are. So, like, if you're a practice owner, just, you have to really start looking at, what do you need to do to be more efficient? What kind of technology do you need to implement? And what kind of team are you building? I mean, I think those things are going to be very important for you to look at in the future. And I think private practice is still, it's not going away. So
that's great. Before we get into our very quick lightning round, it's so fast we call it lightning. I do want to just add to that, and I think it's exceptional to say that the private practice. I mean, we could give things to people who are so valuable to us, and we don't want to lose them. So I do believe what Tony is true. The private practice, there are going to be people here to stay. It's an American dream, so to say, to own your business and to grow. I think this has been amazing, Tony, and you really have impressed the heck out of me. And I mean that. Because being out of dentistry or being away from the chair, you've really learned so much about running a business, and it's really great to hear you. Connect the Dents really can evaluate your practice, and so many options in dentistry to look, to feel, to see what works and listen to the ideas. It was right in line with what I was thinking. Offer more if you don't have that ability. And definitely, I call it procedural matching, and that is that if you're doing certain things in your office and you want to start growing with an associate, bring in an associate that doesn't do the things we like to do. Do the things we hate to do, and they could do it better. Root canals, surgical extraction, bone grafting, hell, maybe implants, maybe sleep apnea. But that's what I call procedural matching. It just grows the practice so much. Dr. Tony Stefanou, it's been great. Here we go, lightning round. All right. I don't know if you ever saw that game show, but one thing, here we go, very quick. One thing you could do this week, if you're listening, to increase your practice's value this week.
One thing you could do this week?
Yes.
This is going to be really funny to say that, but I think you have to look at implementing some more passive income sources, because you could do that very quickly and almost overnight. I mean, even things like retailing from your practice, professional grade products and stuff, that doesn't amount to more chair time. It doesn't amount to, getting more patients in the door. Something like that you can do almost immediately. And then over time, a little bit more, look at some of the expenses, including things like your supplies.
Agreed. Great point. One metric every dentist should know about their practice, like the back of their hand.
Well, I would say that they should know. Well, I guess the metric is understanding what I think they should understand what an add back is. The metrics being like you look at a P&L document, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the expenses you have on there and what you show in your tax return that your accountant wants you to show minimal. I think most people don't understand that is not your profit. That's not your EBITDA, because you're putting all this other stuff and you have all these personal expenses and stuff like that. So I think the metric you should understand is
Your bottom
really
line.
understanding your bottom line and what that means. What is the initial
And
EBITDA number that's
what Dr. Stefanou is going for is he's really talking about overhead, your expenses, our money. We don't know it as much as we should. And the P&Ls or just looking at our cash flow at the end of the month is not enough. Dive into it, learn it, go through it with your accountant or your practice consultant a few times, and then you can do it. Last one second to last. One red flag, what scares buyers away.
one red flag.
Yes.
I think the red flag is buyers, meaning a DSO buyer or another buyer.
DSO.
A DSO buyer. I think the one red flag right now is only like one doctor practices. I think it's very, and you have a one doctor who's 65, 60 years old.
Yeah, they're not.
They don't know for sure. There's a lot of risk involved for a DSO to take them, even if the practice is a strong EBITDA and they have good numbers. The one doctor practice is a little more of a red flag than it's ever been.
I call it a dock in a box. It's never a very attractive situation, right? You've been amazing. Last myth buster moment. What are the misconceptions about selling a dental practice that drives you crazy? I think you touched on it, but what is one misconception about selling a dental practice that drives you crazy?
Well, what drives me crazy is that people still think there's still a lot of people, brokers, practice owners, and everybody that think practice value is a percentage of collection. And that's it. I mean, and the bottom line is that is not, I mean, first of all, you could be cheating yourself out of hundreds of thousands of dollars by thinking that way. And I think, to me, that is, and the other part, which is related to that, a lot of the financial institutions that lend money, whether they're banks or private lenders, they still don't believe a practice can be valued at more than one-time collection. So they're not willing to, even if they see the EBITDA strong, they're not willing to lend over one time. That to me that's a big frustrating challenge.
I'm going to say my piece. My piece is at the end of our career when we're selling our practice, or in the middle of our career and we want to change careers like Dr. Stefanou. What I'm thinking is this. You have to create the best practice for sale and get the best outcome for you, your family, your loved ones. If it is for the next 2 years redoing some of the things that made you really feel good, do it. And if you don't want to do it, then you're going to be subject to a 4 multiple or maybe 1 times gross.
But I think the other point there, Mark, which I haven't really touched exactly, maybe between the lines so people can get this, it doesn't matter, whatever phase you are in your dental practice, though, the bottom line is don't make assumptions. You do not wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to now withdraw from my IRA or whatever. And then you look at it and say, I had no idea that's what my number was. Like you would, for 20 years, you've been contributing to it and you don't even know whether it's grown or not. Everybody should know where they stand. Periodically, they should have a practice appraised so they know which areas they need to work on in order to get to the promised land. And I'm amazed that so many people wait till the very last minute to get an appraisal done, and then they get surprised when they hear the number. Do yourselves a favor. If you really, really want to build up a maximum value practice, no matter what stage you're at right now, know where you stand as of today.
Think about this, everybody. You're 59 years old. You want to sell your practice. You don't like the numbers, so you're going to forget about it. You don't call somebody like Connect the Dents to get to know whether you go ahead or not. Perhaps we should all know the value of our office.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like cash in the bank. And maybe you'll say, I'll give it another 3 years. But what Tony just said about that age is a major, major factor. When you're selling at 65, nobody wants you to stay until you're 70. That's not happening. So really get with a professional. It's been unbelievable amount of pearls. I'm going to read this over and look this over. I can't wait to give you a hug, and I owe you a little bit of the dinner. But I do want to say something. Talking to you, it's a wealth of knowledge. And I don't say this at the end of my podcast every time, but really, I loved your answers, and it's really, it can help all of us. So,
Well, thanks, Mark. Coming from you, that means a lot. And
I want to say it's true.
hopefully I'll be seeing you soon. We're going to have another one of our
Reach out.
parties.
Connect the Dents.
Yeah.
It's very well. Tony, all the best. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mark. See you soon. Thank you.
Well,
Bye-bye.
I just wanted to say thank you, Tony. That was incredible. Sharing your insights, understanding the changing landscape, the dental consolidation, and practical ways every dentist can build their value. Get to know your practice. Get to know your numbers. For our listeners, whether you're thinking about buying, selling, or just building your business for the future, at whatever stage you're at, now's the time to make sure your practice is an asset. You know, I sit there sometimes and I think I got this, I got that, I got a property. And now we could really look at real time and what our practice is valued at. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the future episodes of Dentistry Beyond the Numbers. Until next time, I did want to share some unbelievable news. Dentistry Beyond the Numbers was nominated to be one of the top dental podcasts in the industry. We're only about 16 months in. I'm ecstatic. I'm honored. And please vote because I'll be more honored if I win. And I'd love to win. Dark horse. Let's take that New York boy home. The other thing is, for the second year in a row, I was nominated for the Denobi Awards. And this time, I know how to dress. Cut that out. What are you talking about? Anyway, can't wait to see Melissa. And thank you to all the accolades. But I will see you next time. Listen to this episode. We learned a lot today. What's going on and what's happening in the future. But it was great. And I want to thank Chris Snyder for making this all happen. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time on Dentistry Beyond the Numbers. It's getting great because we're really getting noticed and listen, we just had one of the kings in M&A dentistry. Let's keep growing. Thank you. Like me and do whatever you need to do to me. I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.